Welcome everyone to the December 18th, 2012 Shakopee City Council meeting. I call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Kim, could you please take the roll?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Sherman?
Here.
Councilor Lehman?
Here.
Councilor Theis?
Ho, ho, ho.
Councilor Whiting?
Here, here, here.
Mayor Tack?
Here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, before we move on to item number 3 here real quick, I just want to take a moment as a father and as a mayor to recognize and take a moment of silence for the massacres in Connecticut last Friday. It was obviously hard on everyone as a country and as city, and just want to take a moment of silence to think about and remember the people, 26 lives, who were taken on that day. So please take a moment of silence now. Thank you. Item number 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any additions? Councilor Sherman.
Oh, wait.
Mr. Mayor, 4E1 is asked to be removed from the agenda at the request of the applicant. It will be, is intended to be brought forward again at a later date.
Thank you. Any other additions or corrections to the agenda? Councilor Sherman.
I'll move to approve the agenda as modified.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Clay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Item number 4. I would like to pull item 4D1 from consent, the athletic facility allocation policy. Are there any other items we'd like to? Councilor Lehman.
Mayor, I'll move the consent agenda, noting 4D1 is removed.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Whiting. Can you please read the consent agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Item 4A1 declares several bikes and other items held by the police department to be surplus property and authorizes the proper sale or disposal of these items. 4B1 adopts resolution number 7263, which receives a feasibility report for a public hearing on the 2013 street reconstruction project. 4B2 approves a lease agreement for a communications shelter building with Arvig Communications on the city's lift station site located near the intersection of Marshall Road and Bluff Street. 4B3 declares 3 vehicles held by the Public Works Department to be surplus property and authorizes proper sale at auction. 4B4 adopts resolution number 7257, which accepts work on the 2012 County State Aid Highway 18 Trail Improvements Contract, which is project number 2011-5. 4D1 was removed from consent. 4D2 adopts resolution number 7268, which accepts a donation of an automatic external defibrillator from the Shakopee-Metawanketon Sioux community for use in the lower level of the community center. 4D3 adopts resolution number 7269, which accepts a donation of bleachers for Green Meadows Park from the Shakopee Youth Baseball Association. 4E1 was removed from the agenda. 4F1 approves the payment of bills and electronic transfers in the amount of $1,404,349.97. 4F2 approves minutes of the City Council meeting of December 4th, 2012. 4F3 approves 2013 licenses for pawn shops, pawnbrokers, precious metal dealers, and secondhand dealers to XL Pawn, located at 450 West 1st Avenue, and Pawn Exchange, located at 1133 Canterbury Road. 4F4 approves 2013 taxi cab licenses to TNT Taxi, Southwest Metro Transportation, Shakopee Taxi, and Twin Cities Taxi, all contingent upon meeting all licensing requirements. 4F5 approves the renewal of a towing contract with Shakopee Towing for towing, impounding, and storage services within the city of Shakopee. 4F6 approves workers' compensation insurance renewal with the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust for 2013. And 4F7 adopts resolution number 7267, which cancels the 2013 debt service levies for the Public Works Building bond issue, a portion of the fire building referendum bond issue, and specified general obligation improvement bond issues.
Very well done. Any discussion on the consent items? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Item number 5, recognition of involved citizens by city council. Anyone out there tonight that would like to speak? Seeing none, moving on to item number 6, entertain a motion to open the public hearing for vacation of public right-of-way adjacent to 1301 3rd Avenue West. Counselor Clay,
Move to open the public hearing.
we have a second?
Second.
Counselor Whiting, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is a public hearing on a request for street vacation, specifically a section of street at the intersection of 3rd and 69, adjacent to 1301 3rd Avenue West. As you know from the report, unfortunately, publication in the Shakopee Valley News did not meet the requirements for notice. So staff is requesting that if there's anyone here this evening, you hear from them, but continue the public hearing to January 8th. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Counselor Lehman.
Is there any drainage or utility easements needed in this?
The intent would be to make a fuller presentation, but yes, there would be drainage and utility easements that are suggested to be retained.
Okay.
Anyone else? All right. Oh, Counselor Clay?
Looking for a motion to table? Or
Continue the public hearing.
Move to continue public hearing to our next meeting,
January
January
8th.
January 8th.
January 8th.
Second.
Second by Counselor Whiting. Any discussion? Counselor Lehman.
Do we ask if there's anybody in the audience at this point? For the record? Or does it not matter because it's continued?
Jim?
Mr. Mayor, you can certainly ask. And
All right.
Doesn't matter.
Anyone in the audience to discuss? All right. Any discussion from council? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Item number 7, business removed from consent agenda. Item 4D1. And Jamie, I'm really sorry that I didn't give you a heads up on pulling this off. I had a question this afternoon about what constitutes a civic organization. And I'll let you introduce the item and then I'll ask a question.
Okay. This policy being brought forward is actually just for our indoor athletic facilities. It's not for our room rentals. So I know the question that you have, and I'll address that in a second. But the athletic facility allocation was brought forward a few months ago when we were talking about budget and about our athletic associations getting so large and needing space, and how we allocate those, the minimum space that we have, and where do we get to a point where we just have to show them unless they start changing some of the ways they do things or giving some funds to make new facilities. We have what we have, and this is how we allocate the school district facilities. So this is how we've been doing it for quite some time. We just put it in writing for you to pass, so that as our associations do get larger, we have a formula to go off of that we can show them that we are doing it fairly based on numbers, not on numbers of teams, but on participants for each association.
All right. So does this change from before how civic organizations can use the community center?
That is going to be addressed actually January 8th when you do the fee schedule.
Okay.
And yes, that will come forward as the definition of a civic organization.
Okay.
So this references that, but you'll actually set that definition when we do the fee schedule.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Lehman.
So obviously we can't list them all in this document, so how do we link whatever criteria we use later to this document?
What do you mean?
We said we're gonna take up the criteria for what is a civic group later.
Well, if you change the definition that's being brought forward at the fee schedule, which I had planned to bring forward today, but we want to bring it forward January 8th, the definition that we have for the civic group is defined under your number 2 under category use, and it is going to be a local civic organization, so a Shakopee civic organization that gives back basically the idea, and this is what the park board talked about a few years ago when we came up with this fee. We had a reduced fee for our civic organizations. That these would be groups that are City of Shakopee groups that give back to the city. So our Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Lions, JCs, Rotary. We had in our old definition, which I don't have in front of me right now, but you'll have in January 8th, was just that it was a local civic group or nonprofit got this reduced rate. We've been challenged on the nonprofit because now we have groups, for instance, a state association that has nothing to do with the city of Shakopee other than having a resident live here asking to get that fee for gym space is how it came about, where it's not necessarily a meeting. So we also are bringing forward in our fee schedule that this reduced rate for our civic groups will only be meeting rooms and not gym space, because unless they can prove to us that it's function of that civic organization that they're doing. But what was happening was one person was just saying, I was a member of this organization, we want to rent it under this organization. It was a statewide organization, not a city organization, and so that's why we're changing this. If you choose to change the definition back to nonprofit and allow all of our nonprofits, such as the AA or the Homeowners Association, to be under this reduced rate for our rooms, then I can, with direction, update this policy to
Right.
have that definition.
But we'll handle that at the next January 8th meeting. when we're
Yes,
done with
because
it.
it's in our fee schedule of how it's defined.
Perfect. Any other questions?
But
Go
Mayor,
ahead.
we do recognize at this point that there are civic groups that aren't listed on here. Do we?
Yeah, that's why I just said IE, examples.
Okay.
So yes,
Alright.
there may be some.
Perfect. Councilor Whiting?
I'll move to adopt Resolution 7265, a resolution of the City of Shakopee, Minnesota, establishing a policy for the allocation of athletic facilities.
Thank you, sir. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilor Sherman. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. I'll entertain a motion to recess for Economic Development Authority meeting.
So moved.
Councilor Sherman? Do we have a second? Councilor Lehman?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. President Clay.
We'll open this December 18th, 2012 meeting of the Economic Development Authority. Call it to order. Please make note of the roll for us. A limited agenda tonight. I don't know, we need to approve the agenda. There's only one item on it, which is approval of the minutes for November 20th, 2012. I would accept a motion for that. Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda and approve the minutes for November 20th, 2012.
Motion by Whiting, seconded by Mr. Lehman. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Any last-minute additions of any items for discussion tonight from staff? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, January 8th, 2013. Mr. Whiting.
Move to adjourn till Tuesday, January 8th, 2013 at 7 PM or so.
Motion is made, seconded by Mr. Tabke. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We reconvene the Shakopee City Council meeting. Item number 10A1, receive feasibility report for East Shakopee Industrial Sewer Extension Project and call for a public hearing. Mr. Loney.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Normally I put this on consent, but there are a number of issues with this particular project. As we kind of alluded to on October 16th, when you authorize the feasibility study, we're going to look at two systems. One is what's called a low-pressure system. It's basically a force main where everybody pumps into the system and eventually it gets out into a gravity system. The other one would be have somewhat of a gravity system into a lift station that we would maintain and then pump it back into up to where it's gravity again. But I wanted to outline the issues. We'll make a full presentation. We'll even have an information meeting with the property owners before that. But I want to go through a brief presentation on the issues. First option here, I mean, this is the map. You can kind of see the shaded parcels that would be getting the sewer extended to. And that even includes the Union Pacific Railroad yard, their building yard over here. The sewer is right here. The Blue Lake Treatment Plant is right there, right across the way. It's important to recognize where this is at as we get down in further discussion here. But this would be the project area. We analyzed two systems. The lower pressure, it actually should be low pressure system, not lower, and gravity system, and again, versus the gravity lift station force main system. And one of the things with the pressure system, we have basically a long force main, but we still have to have a long force main with the gravity and lift station, 3,100 feet. We're recommending we'd go with the low-pressure system because it would have lower assessments, basically cut in half to the property owners, and we would not have a lift station to maintain, so it would be lower maintenance costs for the city. Another issue that we have in the, in this particular study is the SAC credit policy. This was identified, this area was identified for city assistance when we did the policy. And with this, we would recommend that SAC credits be provided, and we would waive the city SAC in exchange for a waiver of assessment appeal. That's very similar to what we did on County Road 69 with the property owners there. We estimate about 20 SAC units on existing properties where there are buildings today. And if in an undeveloped could range, but we're just picking a number right now, about 12. So we're looking at maybe 32 SAC units potentially for this project area. Trunk sanitary sewer charge. This area was identified in our trunk sewer plan a long time ago to have a trunk line along Stagecoach Road and extend it south to 169. One problem with that is by gravity, that line would come out of the ground before it gets to the railroad tracks even. So when we looked at that, when Southbridge was coming in, it was decided to make a change. The trunk line is not needed in this area. The trunk line went through Southbridge. The area south of 169 all will go through the Southbridge trunk line system. So we do not need a trunk facility. All we need is a force main to serve that area into a line that goes directly into the Blue Lake treatment plant. Thus, we don't believe a trunk sanitary sewer charge should be applied for this area. In our trunk sanitary sewer policy, much of Old Shakopee and area north of 169 was exempt from a trunk sanitary sewer policy or charge. Last item here is just more for information. Union Pacific requested sanitary sewer service and water service. I only bring this to your attention is that we have determined what their water service charge should be. They're the only developed parcel out there that is not connected to city water. All the other buildings out there are connected to city water. So those are the issues. If council has any questions in particular before we go have an information meeting and then a public hearing, I wanted to bring you up to speed on those are the major issues with this study.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Lehman.
Mr. Loney, with a bunch of these assessments, well over $50,000, are we looking to get waivers of assessment appeal?
Yes, I think that's what I was looking at. When I mentioned that we have had an initial meeting last year at this time even, but the property owners telling me we were going to move forward on this project and mentioned to that as an incentive that this is something we could provide. So I do believe that if you offer, you know, the SAC credits and the waive city SAC in exchange for an assessment. There are a number of parcels out there already who do want sewer. There's a few that perhaps would not be in that position, but we'll have to find out.
Councilor Clay.
If you could maybe just, for myself and some of the public, give a brief explanation. I understand what a gravity system is because stuff flows downhill. But the difference between a low pressure and high pressure system, as far as their general construction or how much pressure difference, why is the cost so much different between the two?
Well, yeah, a water main pressure, everybody has, if they're on city water, usually it's around 60 pounds per square inch pressure. That's a general 60 to 80, or, you know, you don't want to go below 40, so 40 to 80 pounds per inch. That's the kind of pressure. That would be a little bit higher pressure. We're talking pretty low pressure here. The amount of distance or the amount of elevation that we have to essentially raise it up to get it to a gravity line is not that great. So this would be a very low pressure, probably 10 pounds or less. Essentially, you'd have a pressurized pipe system. I just put a drawing on the screen here. There'd be a grinder pump the business would have, and they would pump it into our force main and essentially push the sewage, and then there'd be a check valve which stops when they're done pumping essentially you push the sewage all the way to a gravity location. So it's a very low pressure, not like, it's much lower than a water main pipe would be.
So you can pump a low pressure into a higher pressure?
No. We would pump, I'll show a drawing here.
You said it was going to a force main, which I,
Yeah, and I'd have to show you on two drawings. The existing gravity line on 70th Street. Focus in right here. We can extend this a certain distance by gravity. We do have cover, we can extend that by gravity. At some point, right about in here, that's where the pressurized pipe will come into the gravity pipe and then flow by gravity downstream. Does that make it clear? We're taking a look, it's a pressurized pipe. Any force main that we have usually ends up going into a gravity system. That's a discharge point. For instance, L16, we have a force main that goes about 5,000 feet, but eventually connects into a gravity system that goes all the way to Blue Lake Treatment Plant.
so force main and a high pressure system are two different things.
They're essentially the same thing.
They are the same thing.
Yeah. We call like a force main, when we have a force main, like a lift station, and this is part of the low pressure pipe. In this case, here's where the lift station would be. We're calling it a low pressure system because everybody is on a pressurized system. We could actually have a gravity system here where Ziegler and the other parcels can connect into it, flow into a lift station, and that lift station has to lift the sewage up and push it via pressure into a gravity system. The force main pressure and the low pressure system would be it's essentially the same as far as pressure. You're going against gravity the same distance, the same height.
Councilor Lehman.
Power outage.
Pardon?
Power outage? Under this system, with a power outage and the grinder systems, if the lift station power is down, but the grinder power is up, what happens?
Well, in this system, if it's a grinder system, they're pushing into our system. We do not have a lift station. We are not pushing any electricity.
Okay.
They're doing it all. If the grinder pump goes down in the individual property, they're not able to push their sewage into the system. If our lift station goes down, we have to get out there and get it back up and running, or get a generator out there to get, otherwise, because sewage is still flowing into that. That's why we are proposing this system, because it's much lower in cost for maintenance on our end, but the maintenance cost will go to the property owners. They are gonna have a grinder pump. And I think the issue that you'll see probably at the public hearing is the smaller property owners, they're gonna have to pay for a pump and the assessment. But a larger property owner is gonna have, the same cost of a pump. So he'll look at it as, well, my assessment is half the cost, I can afford the maintenance. Like a Ziegler with 40 acres, they'll be okay with this. I think most property owners will be. From our standpoint as a city, we're saying it's much lower cost in maintenance. And it's lower cost for the property owners in assessments, but they do have the grinder pump. They have the pumping into the system. We do not have to operate a lift station.
Okay. Mayor, I'm just asking because I'm not familiar with these at all, but if the power is out to this grinding pump, then if the power is out to the property's pump, they don't get a backup, they just don't have service. They can't flush the toilet, so to speak, until the power's on.
Correct.
Backing up?
What's that?
Is there backup issues in this case, if the power goes out?
Well, if power goes out, they should know who is causing the problem. It's their own system. They should shut it down. Tell
Right.
everybody, power's out, do not use the toilets, do not use, the water facilities until power's back up.
Can't really back up, it'd have to go through the pump if it was the bigger system.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd just be
This will be a
internal.
check valve on our system. Whatever gets in the system will keep pushing down the line into our gravity system. They'll have to do their own maintenance, and they're, big industrial users or properties, they should be able to handle this. Not like homeowners that we're talking about.
Are these fairly common?
They are common around lakes. They are common, Cedar Lake has a system like this out in, by New Prague. And the reason we really like this system too, if you think about it, with the lift station gravity system, we still need a 3,150-foot force main or, pressurized pipe. Well, we're just talking going a little bit further, and we got everybody, and we don't have a lift station. So it does, and I've had our sanitary sewer consultant review this. He actually proposed this, said this would actually work much better in the area than the lift station.
Perfect. Any other questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion. Councilor Sherman?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 7264, a resolution receiving the report and calling for a public hearing on the East Shakopee Industrial Sewer Extension Project, project number 2013-4.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Clay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Loney. And this will be very good for economic development out in that area and be able to add some more jobs out there as well. Item number 10C1, amendment to City Code, Chapter 14, regulating and governing use of city parks, and Section 5.092, consumption and possession of alcohol. Ms. Polly.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Bringing forward to tonight some requested revisions or recommended revisions to our Chapter 14 of our city code, regulating and governing the use of parks. This came forward, it's coming as a recommendation out of the park board. They reviewed it over the last couple of meetings. One of the reasons why it came forward and came to light is we had some incidences this summer where we found some people selling services in our parks, and we realized in our ordinance there was nothing that said they couldn't run their own, basically running their own business for a fee in the park without reserving the parks. We have in there that we couldn't sell items, or what does it say exactly, but we'll get to that and I'll walk through each one of them. But with that, the park board said, well, looking at the ordinance, there were some other areas that we were lacking compared to some other cities and with our growth. So they requested that I look at other area cities ordinances. I looked at cities and counties to see what sort of teeth they had in theirs as far as their regulation and governing of parks and where we might be have some holes, and then brought forward the recommendations to them. So tonight we're bringing forward the recommendations of the park board of some different changes that we have made to Chapter 14. Most of it's not substantial changes. Much of it is just cleaning it up. Our ordinance had not been updated for many, many years. As you can see in the very first part of it, we were referred to as community services, and we can't even track back to when our department was considered a community service or department. So we want to change that. That's our first change, is just saying that the Parks, Recreation, and Natural Resources is the contact, because most of this deals with shelter reservations or park reservations, special events, and that sort of thing. We work very closely with the police department and Public Works as to the regulations of many of these items as well. But just going through it, very first we added Greenway, and then I said the department, and then ours. One of the items that I don't know if you can see that it's in red, or if you have yours in red, but overnight parking in any of the parks is prohibited without specific approval. We have had some issues, especially down at Huber Park. It seems like that we have a lot of parking. It's not the apartments area, it's actually in the other areas of the park where we have people parking overnight and not having permission to do so. But we also have it in some other parks. I did have the police chief look at this and the other department heads as well to give us any feedback. So overnight parking was added. The camping portion, we had an area in there that was for camping. However, it said that it was only permitted in designated areas, and we don't have any designated areas in the city. So we clarified this. This is one I got from a different city, that no person shall erect a tent, shack, or temporary structure without the permission. So if we have all of this, looking at their whole ordinance, if we have a special event such as Derby Days down there, that's a couple day long event, what they do is they get a special use permit from us where they're permitted to do many of these things that our ordinance has not. So most of this stuff all has the caveat with you cannot do this without permission of the city. So with that said, then we added, all we had in here before were firearms. We added bow and arrow because they are different in our current city code in a different area where they're separated between firearms and bow and arrow. Since we have an archery range that is authorized for the shooting of a bow and arrow, we added that section. Then under vandalism, one thing that came up by the park board was just adding skate-a-pon. That really refers to Huber Park stage. We have a lot of problems with skateboarding on the stage. We have signage, but nothing actually saying that it's prohibited in any of our city code. Control of pets, this was just added. It's exactly the same wording that's in our city code elsewhere as far as the requirement to pick up after your pet. So it's just adding a little bit more teeth. Because a lot of people, when they look for parks, they're going to come to one section. They don't want to look in this section, and they have to go to a different section to find it. Now, most of this I have tracked, and we will track if we ever change that ordinance in the other area, we have to change it again. So I tried to reduce the amount of duplication as much as possible. So this is just one area where the wording is duplicated. Then subdivision 12 is the main one that we were looking at because that's where it talks about the selling of services. So basically, it says it's unlawful for any persons or persons without the city personnel, other than the city personnel, to solicit, sell, or offer any article, product, or service. Basically, what we added was service to our language that we didn't have before. And that should cover some of the items we had this last summer come up. Then going on the next page, we just added some more things to tennis courts because there's some new apparatuses out there that kids are using. Some of the extra teeth in some other city ordinances, so we added it to this one as well. Then subdivision 16 is probably the biggest change of our ordinance, and that's where we also had to amend, if you approve this tonight, amend the chapter 5, section 5.092. Basically, the 5.092 you can see on the very last page. It reads as it currently reads. It reads that way here. We added the very first line in there, so you can see that the current ordinance that we had been following in the parks is that the only alcohol that's allowed in city parks is 3.2 beer, except for if you get a permit from the city. So that's how Derby or the JCs can sell beer in Huber Park during Derby Days. But that we've had one of the items that comes up time and time again, especially since Huber Park has been built, is specifically a wedding. People want a champagne toast with their wedding after their vows, or a glass of wine with their wedding group. And we haven't been able to allow that before because our ordinance says 3.2 beer. They could go through the special use permit and the alcohol license and that sort of thing if they wanted to, but usually it's more effort for them than it's worth for them just to have a champagne toast at the park. So looking at other cities, what we changed in here, going back to subdivision 16, was just saying that it is lawful for someone to possess, serve, and consume just beer and wine. So it takes liquor out of there still. It only allows beer and wine. And then it talks about a keg of beer. If people wanted to have that for a big party or anything like that, they have to get a special permit. So people that are gonna sell it, such as JC's for Derby Days or any other special event that we have in the cities, would still come and get their permit from the city council as required. But this would allow a picnic, a family reunion, to bring beer and wine. They still would not be able to bring the hard alcohol per our ordinance. So, is there any questions with that one? We can stop at that one, right?
Well,
Councilor Lehman.
I have two. First one is just probably a wordsmithing comment, and on subdivision 9, dangerous games, we're spelling out specific games, baseball, tackle, football, hockey. A lot of our parks have a hockey rink in them. I think it would be, a better way of wording that is no park function or game can be injurious or dangerous to the welfare of others, period. I mean, I don't think we really need to try to spell out the individual games. We just need to make sure that what we're trying to get at is that if you're playing Frisbee in a park with somebody and there's a mom with a stroller walking past on a trail, you're not allowed to put them in an injurious position by doing that. And that should just be in general on any activity that's going on in the park.
The history behind this subdivision, I did find out, was specifically for like Holmes Park. It was a very small block park. And there was some kids past that were playing baseball in the park. And there was a backstop there at one time that's not there anymore. But with that baseball, neighbors were afraid that the baseballs were going to go across the street into their yard. So this was put in there to basically say that if you play any of these sports, they should be played on designated playing fields. So need to be played on a baseball, softball field, or a football field.
But I don't want to stop the average neighborhood from getting a couple of kids together to go have a made-up game of touch football or something. You know, the parks are there for us to use. And I don't want to restrict the use. I want to make sure that they use them to their fullest since they paid for them, but yet they're recognized that whatever the activity they're doing there shouldn't be harmful to the property, and it shouldn't be harmful to other users. So I don't care if they play a game of touch football or if me and Steve Clay want to go out there and tackle each other in football, as long as we're not harming the park or other people. That's my point. And we need to encourage people to use our parks, not shy them away from it.
Could be fun.
It could be, but we do need to encourage them not to harm others that are using the park or our equipment. So that's kind of where I'm at with that wording. I think it would just be a lot easier to say that whatever activities you're doing in the park can't be dangerous or harmful for the welfare of other people in the park.
Mr. Thompson?
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, if that's the consensus of the council, that what we could do in subdivision 9, Jamie's just, it is unlawful for any person to play any game, and delete of baseball, tackle, football, golf, hockey, or other games. Delete that phrase, so it would read, it is unlawful for any person to play any game dangerous to the welfare of other persons.
And property.
And yes, continue, right?
Yep.
Did we have consensus that we have a problem with that? Because I don't have a problem with the way it's currently written.
I'd agree with Councilman Lehman on that one.
I think it gets to the same thing. It's just not highlighting individual things. It's encompassing. Actually, it's encompassing more, because if it's not listed in here, by having it broad, it covers everything.
All right.
And then my other one I had under the section 2592, it talks a lot about private property in here, and I'm missing the connection between the private property. And I agree, you should be able to have a picnic in the park with your girlfriend, spouse, whatever, and have a wine cooler or something. So I agree with that portion. Talks a lot about private property.
Right, this chapter is the general city code, so it does pertain to the entire city, but there is a section in it on the second page where it specifically talks about parks and the grandstands, picnic and shelter areas. So that's the sentences in there that we had to say were amended in the park code, because if you read that one, then that pertains to public property. It says, starting on provided, however, that it is not a violation of the section to consume or possess an on-sale container any 3.2% malt liquor in a city park that where such possession and consumption is in a picnic. So this still says that it's okay to have 3.2, but this is the only place in our city code that had anything about alcohol. The old part, actually, it didn't say anything in the parks
Right.
chapter about alcohol, so we were allowing more than 3.2.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, what's happening here, maybe I can simplify it, is section 5.092 is a provision in your liquor code that covers a lot of things. And by virtue of changing the park regulations, there was gonna be some inconsistencies. So rather than trying to cut and paste everything, we just added a provision that says, except as otherwise provided for in 1403 subdivision 16, which is the code you're talking about now, these things still apply. So the purpose of it was just to be a simple way of saying, if these things are allowed in the park regulation, this code provision, that's okay, this code provision doesn't prohibit them. Where it otherwise would have if we didn't add this phrase at the beginning.
Okay, what's a private parking lot to which the public has access? What does that mean?
Well, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, Members of Council, that's already in the city code. I would interpret that to mean probably for example, an apartment complex, private lot. I don't know, I have to say, I'm not sure how the police enforce this, but,
River
this,
Park has both parking, private and public.
yeah.
Well, I'm looking at it from my parking lot at my house, abuts up to the alley, which is public. My parking lot is private, and this is saying I can't have a beer in my parking lot because it abuts private property or public property, and public has access to the parking lot through the alley. Unless I'm reading too much into it, I'm just reading
May- I'll
what it
have-
says.
I'll have to admit, we didn't look at, this is the current language, and we weren't here to amend the current language. We were here just to amend it with respect to the park. So if there's some questions that come up, I'm sure we can, check with the police department, see exactly how they've been interpreting and enforcing this, because I actually don't know.
Council Whiting.
Mr. Mayor, I have a few things to talk about, so on this, a few different issues. Next year, we're talking about a dog park, and under section 11, it says no pets shall be allowed in any park except under the control of a leash. Well, in a dog park, it's an off-leash dog park, so maybe we want to add that except where, in a specific dog park area. Since we're going through this now, we might as well look to the future and kind of take care of some of the issues that might come up. And I know we talked a little bit about this earlier today, where some of the different events are, if it's a city event like Derby Days, it's specifically set aside as being acceptable for many different things, but I'll just take them in order here. Subdivision 17 talks about unlawful catching or taking or killing or hunting of wildlife. Wouldn't fishing with a fishing license still be illegal at Huber Park in the river, or possibly when they do the fishing event at Lions Park? So I would think fishing should be something that should be looked at in that issue too.
Right, but it says except as authorized through a permit, so if that's a city function, the river and fishing in the river is not, the river is a different jurisdiction as well as Lake O'Dowd, so we wouldn't regulate that. And if we were doing it in the pond at Lions Park as we do our fishing event, that's a city event.
It's a city event.
That's an authorized.
So even though the river is adjacent to Huber Park and someone wants to fish there, it would still be legal even though we have it written as it's not legal.
It's a DNR jurisdiction, isn't it?
I would think so, yeah, I believe so.
And I know I see kids down at the pond fishing in Lions Park too. So that's a concern I have. And we talked a little bit about tents, and we didn't have the luxury of having this in front of us when we were talking about it. But under subdivision 18, give you an example. If you drive by the when there's a soccer event at the 17th Avenue complex, along the sidelines, people have the awnings and stuff to keep out of the shade, and they even now have 2 chairs that have the little awning set up. I know this summer we went to music in the park, and it was a hot day, and I brought my mother, who's in her 70s, so I brought a little awning, and I think that those should be allowed as long as they don't, obscure or otherwise bother other people.
Maybe under a certain size or something.
Yeah, I think we need to take a look at that, because we don't want to write a ordinance that we're not going to, pursue and look at. And I think these tents and tarps under subdivision 18 are canopies are even mentioned. I think that's something that we're going to see, and if we're not going to enforce it, why do we bother writing it into the ordinance? The other one.
Well, just to address that one real quick,
go ahead.
Jim, you can, I guess, help me clarify what we might want to put there, but the idea there is that we don't want anybody just going out and putting a tent up in Parkland and, camping as in the other camping section, but also, placing deer stands on Parkland or putting things there that aren't for specialized uses that we've allowed. Now, a soccer game or an event at Huber Park, those are all allowed uses because they're city functions that we have allowed people to go to. So, I mean, if you just read this black and white, then yeah, we wouldn't allow that. So, Jim, I don't know how we would make that allowable. However, that would be acceptable to city, during city functions to allow those type of temporary tents and canopies. We don't want anybody going in and with this either and setting up a staked-in tent without a permit because there's irrigation lines and power lines and that sort of thing. So this is not meant to be for your little four-post shelter that
But that's not what
is
it
the
says.
day. I mean, typically you'd have we don't have umbrellas in here. That's what you would typically see out at those events that people bring to stay out of the shade
And
or to stay in the shade.
maybe we could read it as, unless used as a temporary means to stay out of the weather, as long as it doesn't block or hinder other people's enjoyment of the park or something.
But we still don't want to allow people to stake anything in the ground. So
And put in there unstaked.
Unstaked sun visors are
Sunscreen
acceptable.
or something.
I mean, sun visors aren't on this list,
Well, you know what I mean.
When you
the
see a tent-
tarp or canopy.
right? But yeah, a tent, tarp, or canopy. I guess that's to the discretion of what you consider that to be. So, Jim, I don't know what
Yeah.
suggestions you might have.
It's a tricky one. Well, I get,
It's a
I think the two words we're focusing on are tarps and canopies, correct? Because tents to me connote more than just a tarp or a canopy. I'm not sure if there's a way to come up right off the top of my head with prohibiting tarps or canopies other than those temporary use while watching a sporting event. I don't know.
Or
I'm trying to come up with
Unstaked tents to
For personal shade or something.
person shade or weather protection.
how important is tents and tarps at all, do you think? Can they be,
In this section, I don't think that they're that important
Yeah.
because they're mainly meant for like the
Right.
camping, and they're already in the camping section, which would be.
I actually think, based on the concern, you probably can take those two out altogether, and I think you're gonna accomplish what you want to accomplish and still be able to regulate. I know what you're trying to get at, and I think they're gonna be governed by one of these other things. They're gonna be a temporary shelter or a deer stand or something else, so. I think you can get at the problem and but take out the word tops or canopies. And then if it becomes a problem, we can come back and amend it and come up with some other language.
Okay.
If that's okay, I mean,
And Mr. Mayor, I got one more concern on,
Let's figure out 17
okay.
as well first before we add another item with the fishing. Did we
Yeah.
decide what we want to do with the fishing? Councilor Lehman?
The only issue I see with the fishing would be the Lions Park hole,
Mhm.
which is not regulated by anybody else. I mean, if you go fishing at O'Dowd's, you have to have a fishing license to do that, which supersedes, the city, because you have the license. Same with the river, you have to have a fishing license, so you already have that license that you can display. But as far as Lions Park, I don't know how you deal with that one.
Well, there's also, we're gonna be talking about Quarry Lake and its possibility of being stocked too.
Right.
Mr. Thompson?
I have a question. Jamie, were you contemplating that 7 included fishing on the definition of wildlife?
No, not
No,
at
see,
But
that's
it
my,
says catch.
yeah, I know, and, I'm
You said
not
that
sure,
very clearly.
not sure that catching a fish
Well,
is catching wildlife.
Just put
but
in
other than
wildlife
fishing.
excluding fish.
Yeah, we'll just say excluding fish, yeah, right.
And if they don't get a fishing license, then they can lose everything because they're pretty strict on that.
The idea that this one was added is we've had a couple requests each year for asking if they can go trap like beavers and muskrats and stuff in the parks, and we haven't allowed it. When we have a beaver, we do it, that's why it says authorized city staff only, because we then do it the correct way through the proper channels, but,
You don't need some kid getting his foot stuck in a trap.
so we'll add excluding fishing.
I think that would cover that for me.
And we'll delete tarps and canopies from subdivision 18.
All right, is everyone clear where we're at so far?
Right.
All right. Counselor Whiting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The last section, I noticed in section 22, the last sentence you had, this section does not apply to city-run events. But then in section 23, the motor vehicles, I know Derby Days uses a lot of little vehicles hauling things around. And if we could add that same sentence to 23, I think that would take care of that.
But that's covered under their permitting process.
Is it?
Yep.
Okay.
And
No
Derby
problem.
Days is not a city-run event.
Right.
But it's a permitted event,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
covered under their permits, isn't it, Jamie?
so we're good there. Okay. Thank you.
However, we really don't let them drive on much on the grass. I mean, they still are required most of the time to stay on the trails. There's very few times we let them actually go on the grass. They shouldn't be. So that's what that is just saying that they need to stay on trails and roads designated. But
Any other, Counselor Lehman?
Did we address 11 with the dog park?
Oh, thank you. I don't think we did.
Jim's got his hand
I
up.
think what we need to add there is under
Right.
control on a leash or confined, except in areas authorized or Jim.
Designated as a dog park. Designated off-leash.
What I,
Thompson.
Mr. Mayor, I guess what I was thinking, Jamie, you can help me in the language here, is just begin that by saying, except as otherwise allowed in a city-approved off-leash dog park, comma, no pets, yada, yada, yada. Because the intent is to accept out any future designated
Yeah,
off-leash, right?
Can you repeat that, Jim?
Except as otherwise allowed in a city-approved, I'm not sure that, in a city-approved off-leash dog park, comma. No pets shall be allowed in any park except, et cetera.
Now we're gonna start looking for a place to have an off-leash cat park.
Yeah, some,
Authorized turtle crossings. All right, so so question on this, are we able just to accept it as amended, or do we need it to come back and come on to consent?
Mr. Mayor, I think maybe as soon as you're ready, just have a motion to adopt ordinance number 862 as changed pursuant to this discussion.
Any other questions or concerns about this? Or you can have it come back, whatever. Counselor Lehman?
Well, I'll try a motion with all these changes in it. I'm not sure if I'm gonna.
Well, you don't need to repeat the changes, they're in the record, I think.
Okay.
Just as per this discussion is good enough.
Would you like Jamie to go through the changes real quick?
Sure.
Okay.
Sorry, Jamie.
Mr. Thompson,
No,
please
I'm
tell me if I've missed one. Okay, the first change that we made was subdivision 9 for the dangerous games, taking out the specific sports. The second one was to subdivision 11, adding except as otherwise authorized or allowed in a city-approved off-leash dog area, comma, and then the rest of the subdivision remains the same. Subdivision 17, wildlife, we will put in there excluding fishing. And then in subdivision 18, we are going to remove tarps and canopies from this section. Were we going to remove tents as well from this section? Tarps and canopies. And those are the changes I have at this time.
I think that the tents stay in because the tents are something that we don't want in there.
Okay.
Is that correct? No, that's what I thought.
All right, motion please. Counselor Lehman?
Awful ordinance 862 for series ordinance of City of Shakopee, amending Chapter 14 of the Shakopee City Code regulating and governing the use of city parks and amending Section 5.092 of the City Code dealing with consumption and possession of alcoholic beverages in our parks, with the modifications made as outlined by the Park and Rec Director.
Very well done. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Counselor Whiting, any discussion? Mr.
No,
Thompson?
Mr. Mayor, I just thought one thing. There was a revised version on your desk, and I just want, the only change was a procedural change, because we're gonna do this by publication, but I'm assuming that's the one you
That's the one I
was
made,
referring to.
but we have revisions to it.
Yeah, that's right.
We revised the revised version.
Right.
Right.
Wonderful. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
We do also need a motion, the number 2, to approve the official summary for the ordinance so that we can publish the official summary instead of publishing the entire document. It was action number 2 requested.
Councilor Whiting.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the official summary of ordinance 862 and approve the publication of the ordinance number 862 by the official summary.
Do we have a second? Councilor Lehman, do we have any discussion? Councilor Lehman?
No, never mind.
Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item 11, council member reports. We'll start on this side. Councilor Sherman.
I have no report this evening.
Councilor Lehman.
I did the, I'm not sure what it's called, intergovernmental
Working group.
working group, yes, today. Good attendance, good discussion, actually, and I guess what I gathered was we're at a point where each municipality is putting together their list of various things that could be collaborated on with our neighbors, whether it's the Mdewakanton or Prior Lake in our case, or Scott County. Then we're gonna decipher which items are, first, things staff can do on their own amongst jurisdictions and things that have to be brought before the various governing bodies to address. So that's this place that we're at. We're gonna meet again in February 19th, I think it was. Staff will get together before that in a month or so to kind of finalize these things from each municipality, making a list, prioritizing them list, and then separating them from staff to staff issues and government bodies to government body issues. So the 169 corridor meeting was canceled, so I didn't go to that, and that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Clay.
Nothing tonight, sir.
Councilor Whiting.
Nothing to report.
Had a couple things going on this month. Had a meeting with Stacy Krakis, the new director of the First Stop Shop for Scale, and she's going to be really good at organizing and from a more global side than what we'd be able to do on our own. So that was a very good meeting. And we're starting to put processes together with how the city and the county and Scale all interface with each other and what everybody's responsibilities are. On the 13th, had a MLC, Municipal Legislative Committee meeting, and we talked a lot about fiscal disparities and future legislative, this upcoming legislative session and how it's going to affect cities and if we can get anything to amend fiscal disparities so that we don't get the short end of the stick continuing forward. So we don't know if there's going to be much movement on that, but we're working on it. 13th, went to a ethics class that the Rotary had for high school students, and that was really well attended, and the high school students were very engaged. That was good. 14th was Scale, and at Scale we talked about health initiatives for Scott County with St. Francis and Alina, and also introduced a few people, and it was a very good meeting. And then yesterday morning was Regional Economic Forum with Greater MSP, DEED, other people talking. It's an annual thing that they have evidently, talking about the health of the metro and what we can do to continue to move it forward. And it was a lot focusing on we are as a state falling way behind on education and workforce development compared to other countries and other states. By having us, the state of Minnesota's cut education, secondary education funding a lot. So that was one of the biggest takeaways, and also jobs and how we are starting to move forward on jobs through the organizational efforts of Greater MSP and other folks. So it was a very good meeting. It was, met a lot of good people at that one. All right, any other business for the evening? Councilor Lehman.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. See everybody next year.
I feel like you should
I'll second that.
sing a song of some sort, maybe get up and do a jingle.
Who's got the Santa Claus suit?
There you go.
There it is. It's in the audience.
over there.
Maybe it's Santa Claus.
There it is. And happy Hanukkah. You can't forget the happy Hanukkah.
And yeah, happy holidays in general to everybody.
Exactly. Any other business? All right, seeing none, item number 13, adjourn to Tuesday, January 8th. Anyone?
Okay, I'll move that motion. to
If you
adjourn,
must.
January 8th.
Councilor Clay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Councilor Whiting. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. We are adjourned at 8:01.
City is having its annual pancake breakfast for our employees Thursday morning at Fire Station Number 1. We'll be serving from 7 to 8:30. If you have a chance to stop down and eat breakfast with us and wish our employees happy holidays, we would love to have any or all of you join us.
If only you didn't have a job.